I'm back where I motherfucking left at. Might have sat back for a major fucking comeback. It's been a while, been living life, and I don't know, like I'm just focused on more of my creative endeavors and aspirations, goals, and sticking to them. And I kind of just did not have any videos to make. I had a lot of thoughts, and I kind of just went to Substack with it, or just left them in my phone, or just went to TikTok, or just wrote an article or an essay. This video is inspired by me being on the internet enough, and I do not consume that much internet as much as I used to. So, granted, this is the algorithm that I created for myself. However, I am making commentary now on the algorithm that I see all the time, but I do think that it's a part of a lot of people's algorithm. I'm just like, there's certain things that's just tailored to your algorithm, and then I do think that there's certain things that's just like, okay, wait, this is across the board for most people's algorithm or whatever, but whatever. Now, there is a lot of people that are talking about their experiences with their previous friendships and relationships. This is more so focused on friendships, but I do want to apply this to any relationship, especially an intimate one. But there is a more exposure, and I feel like light being shed on people not pretty much on people's past relationships, and like how in the time that they were in the time that we were in these relationships, we didn't realize how we didn't realize how bad these people actually were. And I'm saying bad kind of like loosely, like that doesn't mean that, they didn't redeem themselves or that they're not allowed to be human, but we didn't realize the gravity of like how shitty someone could be when we were younger. Before, I think these relationships were before our frontal lobe were completely developed. Like I'm so convinced that it was just like, oh, some of us might have had some other things going on top of the frontal underdeveloped frontal lobe. However, all I'm saying is I'm always listening in and reading and paying attention to what people are describing to see if I can relate, or if what side I might fall onto, or if I could put myself in their shoes, or if I've ever experienced something like this to happen to me. And a lot of times, not all, but there are scenarios that people talk about, like, oh yeah, I knew that this person wasn't my friend when they decided to keep using me as the butt of the joke, or when they didn't tell me happy birthday, or when I saw that they didn't care enough to do this and that, or like there's a lot of different, I feel like, different scenarios that people have, that they now feel more comfortable like years down the line saying like, this person was not my friend, or this person isn't my friend, and da 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 da, right? So I took it upon myself, like after finally, I guess, consuming enough of that kind of like content, and just kind of like also sometimes making commentary myself, like sharing. I don't think I've shared like anything super intimate that anybody did that I was close yet. I haven't done like a story time or anything like that, but I definitely speak from a point of like experience with my humanity as a whole, and I'm always pretty much vocal about that on whatever platform I'm on, right? um so I have like a couple things that I had to say about this. So overall, I went back into my mind, and back into my experiences with certain people, whenever I was younger, and thought about how my own situations ended up kind of like exposing that people were shitty. This is pretty much going to be about what the factors were that I was doing that did not allow me to like stop and see people for who they actually were. Like, what was I doing? How did I attract this? How did I attract this? This is my overall arching question for this video and for this subject is like, how are we attracting these individuals? I am also one of those people that will sit up here and say, people aren't that far fetched from what you got going on. Like sometimes we might find ourselves in situations that, I'm not gonna lie to you, like the person that we're around is also somewhat of like it could be a wake up call for something that we need to change within ourselves. If not that, they could be a reflection. If not that, you can be, birds of a feather flock together. So it's like, I'm not gonna sit up here and be on my high horse and say like, oh, and act like this person was so crappy and I just absolutely never had any kind of other shit going on within myself either. You know what I mean? But I do think that there is a difference between someone like sticking around you and with foul intentions versus someone that, they're still developing a certain kind of like awareness and self-awareness within themselves. They might not be perfect either, but they're not trying to like cause any harm to you. They're super conscious of like how they treat you. They aren't doing the same as the person that's a little bit more evil is all I'm saying. So how did we attract quote unquote shitty friends? How did I attract the individuals in the past that I like to be these individuals that, that I would never absolutely talk to in this day and age? One of my first thoughts whenever I was thinking about this, um, as I was brainstorming, was like, sometimes in our dynamics with people, there is this power there's this power dynamic that I've noticed. Okay, so let's start here. Sometimes people are in relationships because they know that they have more power over you. And sometimes people are in relationships because they know that this person has more power over them. Maybe they don't know it, maybe they do know it, but sometimes there is a legitimate like power dynamic happening to where it's like you might be a little bit more you might be a little bit more susceptible to like being around people that, or you might be a little bit more likely to be in relationships and friendships with people who might have a little bit more embracing of their personal power while you could still potentially be trying to figure out your personal power. And I do think that a healthy relationship has two people that are in secure within who they are and their power, and they're comfortable with either, like they're comfortable with their person also exercising their power. And by power, I just mean having a certain amount of comfortability within who they are, to where by being in your power, you're essentially embracing like the spectrum of who you are. Um, you are able to exercise your expression. You are comfortable with yourself. You are not afraid to be seen in a certain way. Like, you're not trying to not step on people's toes. You're just in your power whenever it comes out, and sometimes I do think that it's possible that in the past, I, even if I did feel secure, it's like, okay, sometimes maybe these people that I'm around are a little bit more like, they could have something that's a little bit more of a trait that I could also pay attention to and adopt, and the reason that I'm bringing that up is because I do think that that is a common thing with like friend groups, especially 2 plus. There's always like this fucking hierarchy of some head bitch in charge, and then maybe her best friend or whatever the fuck, and then everybody else is underneath them. Sometimes people are just finding their sense of self as well through like these power dynamics, is all I'm saying. In my opinion, healthy dynamics are people who want people to have their own autonomy and can just demonstrate the ability to also be an alpha and allow their friend to also be an alpha. People that don't want to always be in this alpha role, like I'm everything is my decision, everything is, like there is like a give and take, like a, you know, where's your, you want this other person to have autonomy as well. Like you want this other person to make decisions as well. You want this other person to like think for themselves as well. I think that there can be fucking movies that are great examples of like unhealthy balances that people have with like friendships that they want to call friendships. Mean Girls, like for example, like what, like Regina George, she had this sense of self because like she had other people around her that was constantly validating her. These people had no backbone, they were weak, and they needed a leader. You feel me? And then sometimes in these power dynamics, there's that. And I'm not saying that they are always what they are, which is like it's either one. I'm not trying to say it's either really healthy or one is really just like trying to have a sense of control over you. But I am saying that that is something to pay attention to, because when humans, when any kind of animal species get together, one is going to be a little bit more dominant than the other sometimes, but that does not mean that the one that comes off as less dominant is not also powerful. They just have a different way of portraying it. But a lot of times it's like, okay, some people can tell who's alpha and people can tell who's not alpha. That's not a bad thing. It's just like, it's just about, does the alpha also respect the person that is sigma, beta, etc. Okay. And are they controlling? Do they have like this idea that who is around them is not just an extension of them, but like is also an actual human being and like wants to respect them. No matter what the power dynamic is, there should not be any kind of disrespect taking place, you know, within these power dynamics. So I'm gonna name off a couple things that I think that I'm gonna ask myself, or just as statements, and also to the viewer, like, how did we attract what we attracted? Did you put yourself first, or did you put yourself after them? Like, was there a, in this friendship that we were in, that you were in the past, were you always kind of putting them like, putting their needs before yours because maybe somewhere in your life you saw that that was okay, and maybe there was like, based on trauma and based on your upbringing, you realize that putting you realize like there was a satisfactory that you got, or a sense of self or importance that you got from like putting other people's needs before yours, or going above and beyond for them, because that is a real thing that I feel like a lot of people pleasers have experienced. It's like, did you feel like you were putting your friends needs before yours, and you weren't putting yourself first? In this day and age as an adult, say for instance, one of the ways that I do put myself first is by paying attention to how I feel no matter what. Okay. So like, say for instance, I have plans with someone. Now, I'm not afraid to cancel those plans if I don't feel up to it, if my body is just like, nope, I'm not in the mood, I'm not aligning with this right now, or I just simply need more rest. I'm not afraid to cancel, and I don't feel bad about canceling if, one, we already hung out or seen each other like multiple times within that month, or whatever, and we didn't pay for anything. This wasn't like some long awaited thing. This was just like another casual recreational thing. I would hold this outing to be more important if it was like a friend that I had gone months or a couple years without hanging out with, and we finally got a day together, or they're finally in town, and they live out of town or something. Like, I would probably just be like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna just, you know, drink some caffeine and fucking like enjoy my friend that I haven't seen in a while or whatever. And I do think that the way in which I communicate is thoughtful, because once I realize I'm going to cancel on someone, I let them know in a timely manner before it gets to the close to the time of hangout. Like, if I just know on that day of that I'm not feeling it, and it could be like hours before, I feel like it's considerate to just let them know, like, hey, like, say something, shoot them a text message, etc. That way they can adjust their day how they want to, knowing that, like, I canceled ahead of time, so maybe they can find something else to do, right? That's how I like to communicate. So even though I'm not afraid to put myself first in that way, I still take consideration into how I'm communicating these things, and not just being selfish and being like, oh, well, I'm just not in the mood, so I'm just gonna like cancel. It's like, no, it's about how I canceled. People pleasing. People pleasing is essentially falling into that same category, which is not putting yourself first, okay? Like, you're afraid to disappoint people. Was this friendship based off of you bending to their will? Were you also afraid to ask them for things? And because I think that people pleasers might also have like this trope where it's like they will fucking be so submissive to people, but like they don't expect anybody. They, we, former people pleaser, don't expect people to also like, we're afraid to ask. We're afraid to ask for help. We're afraid to also like, you know, test other people too. Like, I feel like back then I was not testing people. I was not asking the same of other folks. I think that I was also kind of just people pleasing in certain ways. I don't think it was horrible. I think some shit like I didn't mind doing, but it's like that shit is like in a friendship. Look, because I really do think that there's a difference between like, okay, you're gonna be a little. There are gonna be some things where it's like, oh, I wish I'm like, you don't want to do it, but it's like you can do it. Like, as they would say, like the inconvenience of it. And then there's shit that where it's just like, okay, this is downright like, this person is really testing your boundaries. This person is really trying to see what they can get away with. Like, there's a difference. So that goes into, how did we attract what we were attracted? Were we not putting ourselves first? Were we also people pleasing? Another thing is not taking your time to understand their behavior because you're so excited and enthusiastic and anxious about just having a friend. So I think that I think I don't want to say I was ever like super like pressed about friendship for real, because personally I haven't had like a lot of super super close relationships with women. I get to spend a lot of time with like other girls other than at school, and even that wasn't like, I don't really want to get into that, but I do think that whenever I approached like my early adulthood, there were times where I felt good about the idea of having a companion around. And I do think that that kind of blinded me from being able to really assess their character in a way, maybe because you're trying to be all accepting of who they are. So you're not really taking the time to actually understand, like, you're not taking the genuine time that you need to take to really see who they are. And of course, now that I'm older, now that we're older, we can see that good relationships and good being able to vet people takes time. This is not an overnight process. Not being emotionally present enough in the moment to be able to realize that something that they did was actually hurtful. And I think that what can keep someone from being emotionally present could be different factors. Sometimes sometimes shit don't hit you till after you finally have time to yourself, because in the moment hanging out with someone, maybe you were a little bit stimulated by other things, maybe you were distracted by other things, maybe these feelings were new to you, you didn't really know how, you maybe this has never happened to you. There could be a lot of different things why your emotions might not hit you until like later on, like in the day or a couple days down the line when it's still on your mind, right? And it can also just be a common neurodivergent thing to where you have like the delayed processing, which was my next point or next question as well. But I'm just gonna tie both of these together because either whether or not you were on the spectrum or not or experience delayed processing, I do think that a lot of people have been in a situation to where it's like there's a reason why you're not as emotionally present to be able to acknowledge that what actually had just transpired, whether it was a subtle thing or not, behavior or comment or not, you weren't able to actually understand how that actually hurt your feelings. You know what I mean? To the point where you could now see what they were capable of, how they were capable of treating you and shit like that. Emotionally present, meaning you aren't completely here. You aren't completely like in your body and present enough to acknowledge, like, hey, this actually rubbed me the wrong way. Because then, if you were actually present, you could then probe and like have the confrontation or actually be vulnerable enough to say, I didn't like that, what made you say that, that was rude, or what made you think this was okay, you know what I mean? So sometimes when you're not in your emotional presence, when you're not that present, it can be like keeping you from getting to what you need to get to with this person, you know, like uncovering more layers of who this person actually is, right? This also just adds on to it, were you scared of confrontation, you know what I mean? So say for instance you are emotionally present and you are very like aware of a comment or a behavior or their character or something that has happened in front of you, were you afraid to speak up about what it is they did, you know? Like, were you afraid of confrontation, that when they did something, did they owe you some money and they never wanted to um pay you back, you know, and you were afraid to address that? Did they do something that you were afraid to address? Did they say something that you were afraid to address? Because I do think that being afraid of confrontation will keep you with will keep you in the dynamic of like just being overall damn, like you don't ever speak up about anything that bothers you that's not okay, you know, like nothing, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes people, like I said, the scared of confrontation could go back into like the power dynamic. It's like, I mean, whether or not you feel like they were a little bit more overpowering or not, it's like being afraid of confrontation gets no one anywhere, because all relationships are going to have this indifference. All relationships are going to have to deal with confrontation, having disagreements, etc. You know what I mean? Being able to have the uncomfortable conversation, and I think that that could be, you know, very like, if you're in relationships and you're afraid to even spark the conversation, or when someone else comes to you about something and they're confronting it and you're afraid to have that conversation, or you're dismissive or avoidant, then it's just like, you know, but coming from the side to where you feel like that person is more of this shitty friend, it's like, yeah, don't, you can't let them get by. You can't let them get by with things. You really can't. Which makes me think about like the strike rule. Like I do think that you should give people like a strike rule. Honestly, like I think that that's a good system that you should have for yourself. Like, okay, like I'm gonna give people 2 to 3 chances, and depending on what the situation is or who they is or who they are or how long y'all have known each other, sometimes you don't need three chances. Sometimes you don't even need like one chance, because you could tell off of like something that might have actually happened or went down, or some type of um you could see through into their character based off of one thing. It's like, okay, maybe they don't need any chances. Maybe I already know what I'm not, I already know that I won't be around them, you know? Blind loyalty, where you blind with loyalty, where you just kind of like unconsciously just always loyal to them, even if there was like a rumor about them, even if, you know, they always had something happening, but you were always taking their side. Maybe they were always at odds with someone else, but you didn't want to hear other people's side because you were trying to be in that person's favor. So you were just like, well, that's my friend and I'm gonna stick beside her. It's like, that's not always healthy. I do think that that creates you enabling them. And I do think that the issue with blind loyalty is that when you are someone's close, like one of their close ones, a friend, etc., you sometimes forget that like you have more impact and influence and inspiration on how they think as well. So if they need to be held accountable, but you don't, remain silent and you remain like loyal to whatever narrative that they're trying to live in, by not like challenging them to think more, or also challenging them to be held accountable, or at least giving them a different perspective, you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to inspire them to have a changed behavior. So if you don't ever, you know, challenge them in that way, or you don't ever speak up and stop being on the side of like loyalty all the time, and be on the side of like right, what actually is right, what actually has more moral behind it, then you know, you have the potential to either let that person start thinking differently and being like, you know what, maybe I should be more accountable. Maybe I can consider things, or maybe they simply might not want to hear your side. And that also lets you know where they stand and what they're incapable of doing. So I do think that blind loyalty can be a problematic thing, because you are just pretty much enabling the people that need to be humbled sometimes. And I think that this also goes into blind loyalty, which is ignoring their character that exposes how they exposes their negative and harmful sides. You know, like were you just trying to ignore the things that you actually did see? Were you trying to ignore that because you didn't want to face whatever that was? Some things you really can't ignore as you get older compared to when you're younger. You're just like, oh, okay, whatever. And even when you're younger, sometimes you might not think it's that big of a deal, but and that's okay, you know. But as you get older, I really do think that you become a lot more attentive to like the smallest of things. Back to the power dynamic, like was it more so like, were you following, do I need to even add that, I don't know, like were you following their dynamic more? Were you codependent? Were y'all both codependent on each other? Were there unreasonable expectations within this relationship? As not too long ago, I kind of just um came across people and someone that broke down like the concept of like how women can be in these homoerotic relationships, whether they realize it or not. One person might realize it more than the other, but I do think that it comes from like a form of codependency. And even if it's not, the codependency itself can be very platonic. You know, so that's one side of things. Like, okay, cool. Like maybe you might have felt a little bit more codependent on them. They could have felt more codependent on you. Either way, that could be a reason why you're looking past like other things, because you guys are now so comfortable with each other, right? Um or it could also be someone is using someone in this relationship, or someone is jealous when one person has other friends, or their attention is divided somewhere else, or they have more autonomy than the other, like is there like was there some type of like there's some type of feelings coming up in either one of you or you, to where you felt like, I feel some type of way whenever they have other companions, or I've seen for like someone else to where they're friends, but their friend is kind of treating them like, I don't know if she knows it, but I could kind of see it or have foresight without even needing to know too much, that like one person is kind of benefiting from her friend almost as if the same way that she would benefit from a man, just without the romantic aspect of it, just without like the actual like physical intimacy, like the friend is always showing up, the friend is going above and beyond out of her way, the friend is there. Oh, what do you need? You need this? I got you. Or, like in some cases that person is also treating their friend like their protector, like maybe they're afraid to go outside or be out and enjoy themselves and go on an outing alone, and they feel a lot more confident because this person that they are friends with, that they have this long history of a friendship with, is a lot more, they just look like they could protect them, and this other person is all dainty and like petite and shit like that, like, essentially giving her friend the um male kind of like role, and I don't think that that is okay at all, and I've never been cool with that. If I ever felt like that was happening to me, bitch, I'm gonna act like a damsel in distress just so your ass, just to fuck with you, because bitch, get the fuck out of my face with that shit. Like, if we're not fucking dating, bitch, goodbye. So was it like y'all were in an actual relationship just without like the romantic aspect of it? Because if so, that's something to think about. How did y'all actually become friends? Did y'all become friends through proximity? Did y'all become friends through actual proximity? Of like, how it was in high school, where it's like, oh well, this person sits next to me, this person is in my class, or like this person is in this type of friend group or whatever, so we just end up talking. Like, was it that type of like bond, or was it like a more genuine, like this person has the same interests as me, this person is in a specific niche as me, I'm just saying, because I feel like people who end up being friends through just kind of like proximity sometimes, I'm not saying that those don't form or can't form good relationships, but I do think those are also ways in which people will end up getting close to you and they still don't even like you, but then they end up kind of like sticking around you, not being able to really be honest about how they feel, and whatever it is that they're trying to act out with you, it still ends up being fake, it still ends up being phony, and then they still end up having you around because they either don't want to tell you the truth, or they're just a fake ass person in general. They'll still try to befriend you even when they finally figure out your personality is like not even it could, like, their personality could never be yours, like y'all don't mix, but then like they they still try to upkeep some type of like um dynamic with you or whatever, like some type of connection with you, when in reality they could have just simply left you alone. In high school, I had pretty much that happened to me, to where I started hanging out with somebody whenever I graduated from high school, and we were pretty much cool. We were cool, but I couldn't call us friends, but we were cool enough to meet up and start going out together. And then a couple years down the line, I just had to be real with myself and say, I don't resonate with this person as much anymore. I don't really have as much in common with them. And I do think that by me, you know, being this person to overlook that and still try to show up in their face and still accept their invitations would be fake of me, and I'd be dishonoring myself, you know? So that is a real, that's a genuine thing, you know? I feel like some people just end up being friends through proximity, but then they don't know how to like end things. And one person might be completely unaware to like how the other person feels, and that's not cool. And did your friend, did they show genuine interest? Did they show genuine interest in what you like, in what you care about, in what your endeavors are? Or was it kind of like just fake interest? Like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for you to stop talking. Like, like, was it like that? Or like maybe like, you know, I'm sure everyone has dealt with like somebody that was jealous or like kept interrupting them, kept talking, someone that used you as a fucking soundboard. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say everyone has dealt with it, but like, come on now. Like, certain people, you know what I mean? Some of us are just a little bit more, you know, to the point where people want us around, but they don't really like want what comes with us. And we'll be like intellectual, creative as fuck. We'll be like nerded out about some shit, and then the people that we end up that be trying to befriend us or we be trying to be friends with might be just a little too shallow for us. Not saying that they can't be like deep in other ways, but like, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to certain shit, it's just like they a little too, either they really just not your friend for real, they don't care, or they just might be a little too shallow. Like they not like they don't have any other hobbies or interests. I think that that can make you kind of a shallow person when your interests are just only on the opposite sex. It's only on what everyone else is doing, on what's popular, on celebrity culture, on all this extra shit. It's like that's not a fucking hobby though. Like that's not a legit, like that could be an interest when you actually like expand that shit and like find a way to, you can definitely take all the things that I just said and you can like actually create like some type of niche in that to where you could specialize in the shit. And if you can do that, then that's amazing. But I just mean like in your everyday life there is literally nothing going on and you're focused on like only what's in front of you and not curious about life at all. That is what can make you a shallow person. So I do think that some of us ended up being friends with people that just didn't have as much, like, they just weren't as interesting. You know, they were just kind of focused on like normal matrix shit, like relationships, marriage, sex. Like it's like, okay, cool, but bitch, that's exactly what the trap that they expect you to fall into, bitch. I got other, bitch, I'm trying to finish this novel. I'm trying to tell you about this show that I love that I can't, like, I'm so obsessed about. Like I'm trying to, you know, like I'm trying to learn this new sport, you know. Like there's so many other things that, like, you know, I feel like some of us might have actually just been trying to, you know, start or do, or we were trying to open the door of more engaging things, thought provoking things, and maybe we were friends with people that just really was not, you know, they just wasn't on that level, and that's okay. Because I'm not saying that they don't have an amazing mind for other things. It's just, you know, that's just something to think about as well. You know, did you feel, I feel like I've kind of already touched on this, but like, did you feel a sense of satisfaction from feeling needed from the perspective of if you were a people pleaser? Like, were you feeling satisfied whenever you realized like, oh, I did this for my friend? Like, what was that feeling like, you know? And um I do think that a true friend would like also do the same and return the favors and be happy to do that. But like, I don't think that a true friend would want you to go out of your way though. I think that your true real friends would actually just want you to just be like comfortable. They don't want you like being so self-sacrificing. They want to make sure you're good, bruh. So no lie, I had recorded this video. This is my second time recording this because the first time my microphone went out, it died on me and I was so mad. And it was an hour long video and I was just like, fuck. You know what? Fuck that shit. I'm about to re-record this shit. I don't give a fuck. That's why I look sleepy as hell. I'm about to fall asleep. Try to heat up this Indian food. Now, something to think about though. Sometimes the best people you will meet may be someone who does not seek friendship or a sense of intimacy out of you. I'm not discouraging the idea of true friendship because I do believe it exists. But sometimes the best people are not even going to try to be your friends. They might just be some locals that you always see, that you're cool with, in whatever environment that you're always in. It could be like sometimes we put too much effort and emphasis and emotional investment into like our interpersonal relationships and need to understand like we have to exist outside of that, and life is just something to experience. And I do think that when you kind of start putting people under titles, you know what I mean, like I'm not saying that we don't need titles, but I'm just saying like sometimes we have these expectations with titles and it's just like, depending on how your um viewpoint is of like what a friend is, someone else's might not even be that though. So it is to take into account like, you know, what would you do? Exactly what how do you feel like, about certain things? And then also the best thing to do the best thing to do is not go seeking connections out of loneliness, and to find ways to enjoy yourself and get to know yourself through hobbies, solo outings, and deep diving into your interests, creativity, and skills, so you can show up very content in any environment or relationship, already secure without anyone's validation, attention, or companionship. You know what I mean? So figure out how to be secure without seeking friendships. But now that we are in our more seasoned adult, seasoned young adult years, it's like, I do think that we have better experience, we have more wisdom, so it's easier to see certain things, what certain shit means when people do it, you're not really falling for the okey doke as much anymore. And it's very great. It's amazing. Like honestly, this is I feel like approaching 30. I'm 28, so like approaching 30 is like about to be so fucking like interesting and fun, and just like personally for me, I feel like it's going to be easier because I feel like I know exactly what I want. I know exactly what I won't be settling for. I know exactly, bitch, I can make up my mind that fast. Like it's either yes or no. There is no in between. I don't want to be confused. I don't want to be indecisive about shit. It's like, okay, I'm either in this or I'm not in this. Like it's for me being in this new um age and adult stage is me being super decisive, and me actually, I don't want to just say loving myself, but essentially yes, like it's like we all know that people know what the fuck they are doing. Oh, and that's another thing. There was some other shit that I was gonna add on to that I said in my last video. Like, when like people, like, I also have a rule with like communication to where like sometimes it's not personal, it's just the principle. Like, say for instance, I'm texting, and if it's like a fucking meme or some casual shit, or the conversation could have been ended, I don't give a fuck when you respond for real. But if it's like a question that I asked you, and or there needs to be a confirmation on something, but you take 40 days and 40 nights. Now granted, of course, we all have our lives, we are all working, we are all doing something. Some people are a little bit too stimulated and need an additional amount of like days, or even if you're not stimulated, you're just not in the mood to like be on that like convo, like frequency right now, it's like, cool, got it. However, the average person, they're gonna be the average person will respond, I feel like, to certain shit that is of urgency or confirmation or a question um at the time that I feel like is needed out of consideration for the person that's asking. So I'm not gonna lie, like one thing that I do is I take my time as well. I make sure to take my time as well when it comes to how people communicate with me. Like, not trying to play a game with you, but just out of like kind of taking my emotional stake out or my investment out and still responding organically and at the time that I feel like I want to respond, but like off of principle. It's just like, shit, if you gonna take 50 fucking days to respond, bitch, I might as well also take 50 fucking days and not be pressed and enthusiastic to respond either. If you treating me like my text messages ain't that, if you treated me like my convo ain't that serious or whatever the fuck, then I'm not gonna take it personal. But just off of principle, it's like, I'm not about to sit up here and be giving more than what you giving me. So I do think you can apply that to like other shit too, and just understand, like, don't give more than what other people are giving you, because you're gonna regret it. You're gonna resent it. You're gonna be looking at people sideways, like, and in reality, they just don't value you as much, or they're just not thinking about you as much. And that's why it's important for you to have other shit going on in your life, no matter what, outside of fucking relationships and interpersonal relationships. Like, just have some shit going on to look forward to or to be completely involved in, because you really never know why people are in your life to begin with sometimes, until like, sometimes people just might need a filler fucking friend. Sometimes people might have just gotten out of a relationship and they might just be kind of like, like, people might not be taking you as serious for real. So of course you got to have a discernment to be able to understand who is who and why they're doing what they're doing, but it's just something to think about. Anyways, if you stay to the end of this, I love you. And I am about to take my ass to sleep because it is like 4 in the fucking morning. Thankfully, I don't have to get up early. But yeah, I just had to record this video because it's been so long since I like actually gotten back into my shit.